Welcome to the B Movie Club. I'm your host Kevin. This week we're going to be talking about the 1983 James Bond classic, Octopussy, starring Roger Moore. For those of you joining us for the first time, the B Movie Club is similar to a book club where I'll post something on Facebook or on Twitter saying what movie we're going to be discussing. You can watch it, usually streaming instantly on Netflix, and send me your questions, comments, favorite quotes, your favorite scenes, and we'll talk about them on the show. This week, Octopussy, starring Roger Moore. Essentially, what's going on here is it's the height of the Cold War. And within the Russian government, you've got a faction that is looking to cause war, basically, to invade Europe and take over. And they're financing this with the help of an exiled Afghan prince named Kamal Khan, located out of India. It's all very complicated. They're financing it by stealing the Russian treasures and selling them, I guess, for nuclear weapons. Very complicated. The only person who can stop it is James Bond, who stumbles upon the plot because they find a counterfeit Fabergé egg, which is a valuable Russian artifact. And let's just say, there's circus performers, there's smugglers. At one point, James Bond has to go and visit this cult in India, the Octopussy cult, run by the fabled Octopussy, who's she's a smuggler. It's unbelievable, really. I enjoy this movie because I remember growing up, this was one of the first movies that I saw on HBO. We had cable back then, okay? And I was probably 8 or 9 years old when this was on HBO. And I remember going around telling my folks that I wanted to watch Octopussy, and cable was taken out about a day later. So I don't think they understood it was a James Bond movie. I have kind of a controversial view on this. I feel Roger Moore is the best James Bond ever. Again, I grew up with Roger Moore. When I found out that Sean Connery had been Roger Moore before, I was like in high school. It was a big shock to me. I had no idea. Roger Moore to me just has the right combination of just kind of schmarminess and cheesiness. His movies typically were a little more campy, a little more fun, perfect for the B Movie Club. I know technically not a B movie because it was a big hit. But again, I think it's important to remember the stars of the silver screen from the past, such as the immortal Roger Moore. What can I tell you about this? Basically, Roger Moore had only signed a contract to do 3 James Bond movies, and that was over with The Spy Who Loved Me. And every James Bond movie after that was basically done on a per movie basis. Did he agree to do it? Okay, well here's the next movie. After For Your Eyes Only, which came out in '81, he was basically like, you know what, I'm 75 years old. Not really, but might as well have been. He said, I'm way too old to be playing this role. So the producers of the James Bond movies went out and tried to hire somebody else. At this point, they thought about Timothy Dalton, who did go on to become James Bond a little bit later. But somebody that they were focusing on, James Brolin. Shocking. An American playing James Bond. But he was like reading lines. He was ready to go. The reason they scrapped this idea was soon after they started work on Octopussy, a rival company came out with Never Say Never Again, which was another James Bond movie starring Sean Connery back reprising his role. Never Say Never Again is basically a remake of Thunderball. And when that happened, they're like, we can't go with James Brolin, who was a celebrity at this point, but they just thought, he's an American, no can do. So they went back and basically begged Roger Moore to retake the job. So he signed up, and basically this movie, if you watch it, it's a lot of ideas that they were going to use in other movies, but then didn't get around to it. Like there's a famous backgammon scene that was supposed to be in Moonraker. There were lines that were supposed to be like in The Spy Who Loved Me. There was a plot twist that was supposed to be in, To Live and Let Die. It's not To Live and Let Die, just Live and Let Die. And they basically rounded up all these ideas and kind of poured them into this stew, which became Octopussy. Again, not necessarily the most coherent of the James Bond movies. There's a lot of scenes in it that I know some people were not that thrilled with. There's a scene where James Bond is literally swinging on a vine, and you hear the Tarzan going on in the background. What can I tell you? I dug it. One of my favorite scenes is where there's a guy, he's an assassin, who's got like a hacksaw on a yo-yo. So James Bond is on the bed with the girl, with Octopussy, and he sneaks up over, there's some kind of crazy balcony above their bed. Hey, what can I say? And he's sneaking over, and he's about ready to drop the hacksaw on James Bond. And some water that was on the hacksaw because they had to swim to the palace, I guess, dripped on James Bond, and it kind of alerted him. And then there comes the big saw, and he's fighting with the guys. I dig it. What can I tell you? Good times. This was also one of the only James Bond movies where they had a Bond girl reprise a role. She actually doesn't play the same role. Maud Adams, who plays Octopussy, was in The Man with the Golden Gun, playing a totally different character. So there you go. That had never happened before, and has never happened since. You can also find a cameo from a famous tennis player at the time, Vijay Amritraj, playing Vijay, the Indian spy who's helping James Bond on this. So I dug it. I know some people not so much. People hated the title. Can't say so that I blame them. But the title actually came from James Bond short story written by Ian Fleming. So at this point, they'd basically tossed the books out the window, and we're just like, well, we'll just use the title, or we'll use this one scene, and then make up something totally different. Rotten Tomatoes gave it 47% rotten. That's totally unacceptable. I totally disagree. Well, okay, 47, I can see it. Like I said, not the most coherent plot in the world, but I think it's a lot of fun. Next week, we're going to be doing Strange Brew. You can ring in the new year with Strange Brew. As you know, I like to end every episode with a favorite quote from the movie. And here it is. Thank God for hard currency. I could have gone with, it's all in the wrist. I'm trying to do my Roger Moore voice. So anyway, thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next week, and be well.